With a total area of 14.5 million square kilometers, bigger than the size of Europe, and an ice area of 4.67 million square kilometers, the Arctic represents roughly 4% of the Earth's surface and 60% of the Earth's ice area. But deep beneath the Arctic ice lies a fortune, and untold reserves of oil and gas. Estimated to hold 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of undiscovered natural gas. But this treasure is also a ticking time bomb, threatening the fragile ecosystem and the future of our planet. Will the Arctic become a battleground for global powers, or can we find a way to cooperate and protect this precious resource? To answer the question, we have to go back to the beginning. The Inuit were the initial Arctic explorers, and even though most of their travels aren't well documented, they are credited as the ones who discovered the Northwest Passage. In the 16th century, Europeans wanted a shorter way to Asia and began searching for the Northwest Passage. Around the 1570s, British explorer Martin Frobisher was among the first Europeans attempting to find the passage but didn't get past the inlet now named after him. In 1845, British explorer Sir John Franklin set out to find the Northwest Passage with 2 ships, but he and his crew disappeared. Despite an extensive search, they were found years later on King William Island. The crew's remains suggested lead poisoning and even cannibalism. Franklin's expedition, although tragic, contributed to mapping the Northwest Passage. The full route was completed in 1903 by Roald Amundsen, a Norwegian explorer. In 1940 until 1942, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police schooner St. Roch became the first to navigate the passage in both directions. So, who owns the Arctic? More than half of the land next to the Arctic Ocean belongs to Russia. About 2 million people live there, which is half of all the people in the Arctic. The USA has Alaska, Greenland is a part of Denmark, and there are also Canada, Iceland, and Norway. The Law of the Sea Convention allows a state to conduct economic activities for a distance of 200 nautical miles from the baseline, or the continental margin where it extends beyond 200 nautical miles. There are 2 methods to determine the extent of a continental margin under the LOSC. The first method is by measuring geological features using what is called the Gardner formula. The second method is to use fixed distances in what is called the Handberg formula. But beyond that, like the North Pole, is meant for everyone. It's supposed to be saved for the future and is not used by countries or big businesses. However, if a country can show that the water near their land goes more than 200 nautical miles, they can ask for even more control. Norway, Russia, Canada, and Denmark have already done this, maybe thinking about the future chances when the ice melts. Speaking of melting, the Arctic is melting, revealing a long-dormant trade route to the Northwest Passage. This icy shortcut between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans is 7,000 kilometers shorter than the current shipping route through the Panama Canal. That's about 2 weeks saved in traveling time. From London to Tokyo via the canal, the distance is about 23,000 kilometers. Traveling east through the Suez Canal is also longer at 21,000 kilometers. The route through the passage is just 16,000 kilometers. But the race to exploit it is heating up, and the US may be falling behind. The Northwest Passage is no easy feat. It's choked with thick ice, requiring powerful icebreakers to clear the way. As the ice melts, the potential for this route increases, but so does the competition. Focus on the US. The US has a long history in the Arctic, but its icebreaker fleet is aging and inadequate. The US Coast Guard's lone heavy icebreaker, the Polar Star, is over 40 years old and in dire need of a replacement. In fact, in 2018, Halter Marine got a $1.9 billion contract to build America's 2 new polar security cutters with an option for a third. The delivery of the first ship, planned for 2024, got delayed to around 2027 due to the design issues and the bankruptcy of Halter Marine. In November 2022, the struggling Halter Marine was sold to Bollinger Shipyards. With the new cutters delayed, the US Coast Guard had to spend $76.2 million to extend the service life of Polar Star, the only heavy polar icebreaker currently in service. Polar Star handles all US polar icebreaking missions, and although there is another icebreaker, US CGC Healy, it's considered as a medium icebreaker. Healy, with the largest size for scientific research, can break ice continuously up to 4.5 feet thick at 3 knots. Polar Star, designed for resupply and breaking ice up to 21 feet thick, is a heavy icebreaker. This lack of modern icebreakers puts the US at a disadvantage compared to its rivals, particularly China and Russia. China boasts a growing fleet of powerful icebreakers, including the Shuilong 2, which is capable of breaking ice up to 2 meters thick at a speed of 2 to 3 knots. Russia, meanwhile, has a long history of Arctic exploration and boasts the largest icebreaker fleet in the world, with over 36 icebreakers. Their newest icebreaker, the Arctica, is a nuclear-powered behemoth capable of breaking ice up to 3 meters thick in continuous operation. The lack of US icebreakers has significant implications for the Northwest Passage. It limits the US ability to conduct research, enforce maritime law, and protect its claims in the region. More importantly, it puts the US at a disadvantage in the race to exploit the economic opportunities of the Northwest Passage. This route could significantly reduce shipping times and costs between Asia and Europe, opening up new markets and trade routes. In addition to control of viable trade routes, the Arctic Ocean offers a chance to build state power. Beijing, for example, incrementally built military installations in the South China Sea, positioning itself as a main power in the area, controlling trillions of dollars in trade passes. The goal is to make sure something like that doesn't happen in the Arctic, which is close to the shores of the United States, Canada, and other NATO allies. But without a strong presence in the Arctic, the US risks being left behind as China and Russia dominate this vital trade route. So, what can the US do to catch up? The answer lies in investing in a modern icebreaker fleet. The US Coast Guard estimates it needs at least 6 icebreakers to fulfill its mission in the Arctic. Currently, the average age of US icebreakers is 43 years, significantly older than those of other Arctic nations. Congress has approved funding for a new heavy icebreaker, but construction is slow and the ship won't be operational until 2029. A modernized and robust icebreaker fleet is essential for the US to protect its national security interests. Icebreakers play a crucial role in supporting military operations and deployments in the Arctic. Russia's dominance in this area translates to a stronger military presence in the region. It can also enable the US maintain its influence in the region, participate in the responsible development of the Arctic, and ensure the safety of its citizens and personnel. The US also needs to develop a comprehensive Arctic strategy that goes beyond icebreakers. This strategy should include investments in research, infrastructure, and diplomacy to ensure that the US has a strong and lasting presence in the Arctic. But it's not only the US that needs to up their game in the Arctic. NATO, as a matter of fact, is lagging significantly behind as well. Combined NATO countries possesses only a handful of icebreakers, falling far behind Russia in terms of numbers and capabilities. Many NATO icebreakers are nearly the end of their lifespan, raising concerns about operational readiness. Compared to Russia's substantial investments in icebreaker technology, NATO countries have lagged behind in terms of modernization and fleet expansion. So what's the path forward? NATO countries need to invest significantly in modernizing their icebreaker fleets and building new vessels to meet the challenges of the changing Arctic. Collaboration between NATO members is essential for pooling resources, sharing expertise, and developing a comprehensive Arctic strategy. Recognizing the growing importance of the Arctic, NATO must adopt a long-term vision for its presence and influence in the region. The US Coast Guard is currently grappling with challenges related to recruiting and retaining personnel. In the year 2020, as a strategy to attract qualified candidates for positions such as lieutenant, lieutenant commander, department head, and executive officer, the Coast Guard offered a substantial $40,000 incentive. Surprisingly, not a single person expressed interest in these roles. Faced with this lack of response, the Coast Guard had to revise the eligibility criteria to make the positions more appealing to potential applicants. To delve into this matter further, the 2020 hearing of the US Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation highlighted Russia's ambitious plan to gain complete control over the Northern Sea Route. Notably, Moscow has issued threats asserting its intention to sink foreign vessels lacking a Russian pilot or a Russian escort vessel. The implication of this is that the future of the US in the Arctic hangs in the balance. The time for deliberation and delay is over. Investment in a modern icebreaker fleet is not just an option, but a necessity to ensure the US remains a key player in this rapidly changing region. Equally crucial is the need for a sufficient number of trained personnel to effectively operate these icebreakers. What do you think? Will the US lose the race for the Northwest Passage? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos about the Arctic and the future of our planet.